Welcome to part 2 of the series about Ryo Tatsuki, a manga artist who claims to dream about the future. The dream that made her name known across Japan was about the Great East Japan earthquake that happened on March 11, 2011, which I described in part 1. In today's video, I'll be going over some of her other dreams, the most noteworthy one being about her prediction of an even bigger earthquake and tsunami occurring in July of 2025. Enjoy. Dream number 1. The death of Freddie Mercury. 46 years ago, in July of 1976, Ryo Tatsuki had a dream. It was a dream in which Freddie Mercury, the vocalist of the British rock band Queen, died from some kind of epidemic. She was a huge fan of Queen, so at that time she believed she dreamt of him because of that. However, 10 years later, she apparently had another dream about him. In it, she was watching a movie about the band, but only the 3 other band members were part of it, not Freddie Mercury. Furthermore, bronze statues of them appeared in which 2 of them were the other band members, and the 3rd was some unknown person. And there was an empty space as if another statue had been removed, maybe where Freddie Mercury should have been standing. 5 years later, on November 24, 1991, Freddie Mercury died at the young age of 45 due to pneumonia resulting from AIDS. AIDS was first discovered as a new disease in 1981, so Ryo's dream about him dying from some kind of epidemic could be attributed to this fact. In addition, Adam Lambert became the new vocalist for Queen, which might have manifested as the 3rd unknown statue in Ryo's dream. Dream number 2. The death of Yutaka Ozaki. On April 25, 1982, she dreams of the death of a rock star, and 10 years later, on December 25, 1992, he passes away due to a suspected drug overdose. Dream number 3. The death of Princess Diana. On August 31, 1992, Ryo dreams of Princess Diana holding a newborn baby and words appearing above her which read, "Princess Diana has died." 5 years later, on August 31, 1997, she passes away due to a horrific car crash. This dream was actually published before her death in 1997, so it could be argued that this was a form of prophecy. It's hard to ignore the fact that the date in which she had the dream and the date of Princess Diana's death coincide. Dream number 4. The mysterious cave. On August 27, 1989, she had a dream where she and another person were inside what looked like a tunnel or a cave of some sort. It was enormous and she could see the sea in the background. She couldn't see the person's face because it looked blurry, but she could tell that it was a woman and that she was moving her mouth as if trying to say something to Ryo. 2 years later, again in August, Ryo Tatsuki went for a walk in a park she'd never visited before in her hometown of Yokohama City. In the park, there was a bunker which was built during the war to store supplies and to protect personnel from enemy attacks. As soon as she saw it, she knew it was the same place she'd seen in her dreams, and out of curiosity, she took a picture of it. Now, I did a bit of research on what park this could be, and I believe it's a park called Nojima Park. It's famous for having these bunkers, and as you can see, it's a little island, so it's surrounded by water. In January of 1992, Ryo saw on the news that a woman's body had been found near the bunker that she had photographed that time she visited. The body was dismembered, placed in a plastic bag, and left in a wooded area with little foot traffic. An autopsy revealed that she had been dead for more than 6 months, which means that the body was most likely there when she visited the park and took a picture of the bunker. She was so freaked out by this revelation that she apparently tore out the diary entry of the dream and threw it away. I tried to find a news clipping of this case, but I was unable to do so, which is strange. But considering Ryo Tatsuki's stories are well known across Japan, and this particular dream was reenacted on a TV show called Unbelievable, I don't doubt that this case actually occurred. Dream number 5. The Kobe Earthquake. On January 2nd, 1992, Ryo has yet another dream. Words and a single image appears, and it says, "In 15 days or 15 years," with a picture of a huge crack in the earth in Kobe City. And 15 days later, on January 17th, 1995, the Great Hanshin Earthquake, also known as the Kobe Earthquake, hit. It measured 7 on the seismic scale, and more than 6,400 people died. Dream number 6. The Countryside. In a dream she had on September 14th, 1993, she was standing at a fork in the road. It looked like the countryside with lots of loquat trees growing on both sides, and her family were eating them. Exactly a year later, on September 14th, 1994, her uncle, who lived in Yamagata Prefecture, passed away, so her family traveled from Yokohama to attend his funeral. On her way to the funeral, she came across a familiar scene. It was a fork in the road, and instead of loquat trees, it was surrounded by a vineyard. Without thinking much, she took her camera out and took a picture. After having it printed, she opened her dream diary and compared what she drew to the photo. She found that the compositions, like the appearance of the ripened bushes and the shape of the road, were very similar. She also realizes the date on which the photo was taken and the date when she dreamt about it were exactly the same. Dream number 7. Unknown Virus. On January 2nd, 1995, she dreamt that there will be a disease outbreak that will kill people, with its peak occurring around April 2020, and that it will occur all over again 10 years after that. Approximately 25 years later, in 2020, the coronavirus wreaked havoc around the world. In April of that year, Japan's then Prime Minister Abe put the entire nation in lockdown. Dream number 8. The Funeral. On November 26, 1995, Ryo Tatsuki dreamt of her own funeral. The funeral was on July 15th, however, there was no year. Some people believe that this funeral was metaphorical and signified her retirement from being a manga artist. Dream number 9. Mount Fuji Eruption. On August 20th, 1991, she had a dream where she saw Mount Fuji drawn on what looked like a postcard. She saw a bunch of smoke, which she initially assumed were clouds, until it began to erupt with a huge booming sound. Readers of her book that was published in 1999 saw that many of Ryo's dreams that came true were happening in multiples of 5 or 15 years. It then became a huge rumor that spread all across Japan that Mount Fuji might erupt on August 20th, 2021, but that never happened. However, it's true that Mount Fuji is a dormant volcano that hasn't erupted for over 300 years. Therefore, it is expected to do so sometime in the near future. Dream number 10. The Tsunami. On December 25th, 2001, she had a dream where she was looking down at Earth from outer space, and she could see waves spreading from around Indonesia. 3 years later, at 7:58 a.m. on December 26, 2004, a magnitude 9.1 to 9.3 earthquake occurred off the coast of Sumatra, located in western Indonesia. It was caused by a rupture along the fault between the Burma Plate and the Indian Plate, and resulted in a tsunami with waves up to 30 meters or 100 feet high. It's also known as the Boxing Day tsunami after the Boxing Day holiday. It devastated communities along the surrounding coasts of the Indian Ocean, killing an estimated 227,898 people in 14 countries and is considered to be one of the deadliest natural disasters in recorded history. Dream number 11, July 2025. This is the dream that has all of Japan talking and is something that I can't stop thinking about either. Ryo Tatsuki had a dream in July of 2021. She saw a date on a blank white screen and it read, "The real disaster will come in July 2025. After the words disappeared, she saw a scene unfold before her. Once again, she was looking down on Earth from high up in the sky and saw the ocean floor like the satellite view of Google Maps. There was a sudden eruption in the ocean between Japan and the Philippines, which caused tsunami waves to spread out in all directions. She watches them eventually hit the Pacific Rim, which covers the western shores of North and South America, Australia, Eastern Asia, and the islands of the Pacific. The Nankai Trough is a submarine trough located south of Japan's island of Honshu, extending approximately 900 kilometers or 559 miles offshore. The underlying fault, the Nankai Megathrust, is the source of the devastating Nankai Megathrust earthquakes, and it is also potentially a major source of hydrocarbon fuel in the form of methane hydrates, which is a solid form of methane. Apparently, Ryo saw an area of the Pacific Ocean facing Japan, bubbling, like what you would see when your soup is boiling in a pot. It is believed that this could be the methane escaping from the deep sea floor and rising to the surface. There's evidence that Japan has one of the highest amount of methane hydrates, so it is plausible that if an earthquake were to occur along the Nankai Trough, it could disturb the seabed enough for some of the methane to escape. She also drew two dragons, which surprisingly looks like this image that I captured from Google Maps. The Nankai Trough marks a subduction zone that is caused by the subduction of the Philippine Sea Plate beneath Japan. Apparently, the Philippine Sea Plate is sinking a few centimeters a year from the south. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, when the plates move suddenly in an area where they're usually stuck, an earthquake happens. As you can see in this image, the overriding plate is stuck to the subduction plate and continually gets squeezed. Its leading edge is dragged down while an area behind bulges upward. This movement goes on for decades or even centuries, slowly building up stress. An earthquake along a subduction zone happens when the leading edge of the overriding plate breaks free and springs seaward, raising the seafloor and the water above it. This uplift starts a tsunami. Meanwhile, the bulge behind the leading edge collapses, thinning the plate and lowering coastal areas. The most tsunamis and the largest result from the earthquakes that originate mainly in subduction zones. In her dream, she watches the seafloor rise and sees Hong Kong, Taiwan, and the Philippines all connect as one piece of land. Considering how big of an earthquake is expected to occur sometime in the future, this vision might not be that absurd and is completely plausible. These earthquakes are calculable because the rate at which subduction is occurring is known, and it is said that another huge earthquake will hit Japan by the year 2050. In Japan, earthquakes are happening all the time, and it's one of the most seismically active countries in the world because it sits on top of 4 major tectonic plates. Let's not forget all the underwater volcanoes too. So, if someone was to predict an earthquake here, it's bound to come true one day. I think the biggest difference here is that Ryo Tatsuki has dreamt about some of the huge catastrophic earthquakes, and the one she sees happening in July 2025, if it indeed does come true, will be exactly that. Some of the dreams I've shared with you today were included in her book long after the events actually happened, so skeptics say that she could have just added them into her dream diary after the fact and pretended that she dreamt about them years before it happened. And of course, that's entirely possible. What do you guys think? When Ryo Tatsuki was asked whether she considered herself to be a prophet, she replied that she didn't feel that way at all, and that in fact her dream diary contains 8 to 12 years worth of dreams. Therefore, only a tiny fraction of her dreams seems to suggest anything prophetic, and for the skeptics out there, it might just boil down to her being lucky, like winning a game of roulette. All I can say is that July of 2025 will be a date that I will keep in my mind and make sure my family and I are prepared. This is a terrible way to put it, but I hope Ryo Tatsuki is just a fraud and she's wrong about all of this. But there's a part of me that believes her, and I'm worried about what next year will bring. And that concludes this special episode. It was fairly short up to this point, and because I feel awkward releasing short videos, I've added one story as a bonus. Thank you for dropping by, and if you haven't subscribed yet, you better get on it. Until next time, stay safe. Cheers. I'm sure you've seen people talking into thin air while on a train or walking in the city, and I'm pretty certain you ignore them. You assume they're suffering from some kind of mental illness, suffering from hallucinations. But what if they weren't hallucinating at all? This happened about 10 years ago. My life as a uni student just began, and I was spending a lot of my free time drinking and going out to different parties. One of the guys who was in the same circle as I was called Tsuyoshi. He was a good-looking bloke and was fun to talk to, so we became quick friends. He lived by himself close to campus, so I'd go to his place almost every day for some drinks. We were called the alcoholic duo from those around us. I was pretty happy to be called a duo with someone like him because he was just such a great guy, and like I just said, he was really handsome. Tsuyoshi also had a really high alcohol tolerance and could outdrink anyone, making him the life of the party. Since I was always with him, that meant I was in the center of everyone's attention too. They were some really great days. By the time we went into our second year, Tsuyoshi had a girlfriend. Her name was Hikari. One night, somewhere around 2 a.m, I received a call from her. She was frantic, screaming over the phone and telling me to come to Tsuyoshi's apartment straight away. I was out drinking with some other buddies and honestly couldn't be bothered, but I decided to go when she began getting even more hysterical and wouldn't let up. I left the party and hurried to his place. I couldn't believe my eyes when I got there. There Tsuyoshi was, squatting on top of his desk with nothing but a loincloth on him like a sumo wrestler. He was bouncing up and down, waving his arms in the air from side to side as if he was doing the Bon Odori, which is a traditional dance performed during the Obon holiday in August. Obon is an annual holiday that commemorates and remembers deceased ancestors, and it's believed that their spirits return at this time to visit their relatives. The dance is performed all over Japan in order to receive spirits and then to send them off again. There was a small cup of sake and a plate with a mound of salt on it. I initially thought that he was playing a prank and being his usual drunk self, but I also knew that that wasn't possible because he was crying. He had tears streaming down his face and yelling out, "Gokanjo! Gokanjo!" non-stop. The word gokanjo is spoken when one prays for the coming of gods and Buddha or divine oracles. It is also used to solicit and welcome high priests and others. There's an alternative meaning which means to transfer the alter ego or spirit of a deity or Buddha to another place and enshrining it. It's a bit hard to guess what Tsuyoshi truly meant, but we can make an educated guess that something spiritual was happening. The next dead giveaway that he wasn't joking around was the fact that his whole apartment smelled like piss. His pillow and his desk were completely covered in it. No matter how many times I tried to snap him out of it, he remained completely unfazed and continued to yell and dance. Hikari was crying and I asked her what happened. She didn't know. They had planned for her to come over that night, so when she got there, she rang the doorbell, but there was no answer. She could hear him yelling inside, so she tried to open the door and it was unlocked. When she walked in, she saw Tsuyoshi doing exactly what he was currently doing, which meant that he had been dancing and yelling non-stop for over an hour. I felt at that moment that this wasn't a good situation. He really wasn't that kind of person, but I assumed he had done drugs and was having a bad reaction to it. I told Hikari as much and said the police will most likely get involved, but to call the ambulance first and foremost. Not long after, the paramedics arrived. Tsuyoshi was still yelling and dancing, and when the paramedics tried to get him off the desk and into the stretcher, he began to violently fight back, and the police were finally called in to handle the situation. Hikari and I were both taken to the station, and we were suspected of using illegal drugs, which obviously wasn't the case. The doctors didn't find any traces of drugs in Tsuyoshi's body, and he was discharged from the hospital 3 days later. The matter was explained as him having a seizure triggered by an unknown cause. He barely had any memory of that time and was back to his usual self, laughing about it and saying he probably drank way too much. I felt relieved and jokingly said that he was now a true alcoholic as he drank so much that he began to hallucinate. But it was from this day that Tsuyoshi started to change and become strange. I would often catch him staring off into space, talking in a muted tone towards the wall, and he also began skipping his uni lectures. I was worried about him and went to his apartment on several occasions to see if he was okay, but he'd just say that he wasn't feeling well and eventually said that he didn't want me dropping by anymore. Now that was a hard pill to swallow and had me feeling depressed, but I eventually picked myself back up. I convinced myself that it was a waste of time to worry about someone who didn't want any help. 3 whole months went by when I suddenly got a call from Tsuyoshi. He said he needed to talk to me about something and to go over to his place. His tone of voice made me feel uneasy, so I hurried over to his apartment. When I entered, I was hit with the smell of sake and a sweet and sour, pungent smell. It made my nose hurt. Tsuyoshi was sitting in the middle of the room, drinking. He looked like a completely different person. He had lost so much weight that I could see his bones protruding. He hadn't shaved in God knows how long, and his hair was disheveled. He looked at me and said, "You probably won't believe what I say, but I have to tell you the truth." I was absolutely clueless and had no idea what he was going on about, but I knew I had to hear him out. And this is what he told me. 3 days before the first supposed seizure I had, I went camping with a few friends over in the next prefecture. We were having a barbecue using the campsite's wood fire oven when this horrible smell began to emanate from the fire. We opened it back up and poked the burned wood around when we saw a huge amount of what looked like charred animal hair. We were disgusted and felt creeped out, so we decided to move to another oven. It's from that day that weird things started to happen. I would get a whiff of that horrible smell when I'm out in town or at uni or even in my car, and when I smell it, I see a woman in a kimono out of the corner of my eye. She has no eyes or nose, just a mouth. She's standing there smiling at me, and she appears to be getting closer each time I see her. I thought he was definitely suffering from some kind of hallucination. He must have seen the look on my face and asked me to just hear him out till the end. so I nodded without saying a word.
The day before the ambulance took me to the hospital, I had a dream. There was an old man in it who claimed to be my guardian angel. He told me that the woman in the kimono that I'd been seeing was someone that my ancestor murdered a long time ago. After she died, she continued to torment my ancestors and only stopped after a pact was made that our bloodline would never set foot in that land again. Where we went camping was apparently that forbidden area, and it started up all over again because I went there. The old man, my guardian angel, told me that if I don't do anything about it, she'll eventually torture me to death. And if I didn't want that to happen, he told me I had to go to a certain place at a specific time with a list of things he was going to give me and perform some kind of ritual. I woke up after he gave me all the directions. Considering the fact that I'd been seeing this woman for a while now, I did everything that I was told. But I don't remember anything from the moment I got on my desk. I don't remember you or Hikari arriving. I don't remember being taken away by an ambulance. Nothing. And that's not all. It's from that day that the woman has started talking to me directly. I know it sounds plain crazy, but I swear to God she's talking to me. She tells me about her torment and what she suffered through. She tells me she wants me to feel the exact same way. She says that my fate is to suffer, and the people around me too. When I talk to her, she replies. I asked her why me, and she said it was because I broke the pact. It doesn't matter that I didn't know anything about it. She appears and talks to me wherever I am. When I try to ignore it, I start feeling so depressed and suicidal, and I begin to suffer from the fact that I want to die, and yet I can't. The only time I feel free is when I'm sleeping and carrying out these rituals that my guardian angel tells me to do in my dreams. I'm constantly drinking because I have a hard time falling asleep. If she starts talking to me while I'm out, people think I'm talking to myself. I have no memory of any of the rituals that I do, and I'm worried that I might start doing crazy things like last time, so I'm scared to go out. I'm telling you, I'm not crazy. I haven't lost my mind. I mean, I'm talking to you right now as calm as can be, right? It's not a hallucination either. The woman's appearing more and more frequently, and I don't think I can handle it much longer. I don't want to trouble those around me, so I've decided to check myself into a hospital soon. I just wanted to say a final goodbye to you.
That was the end of his explanation of why he was acting so strange the last few months. I honestly couldn't help but feel how scary hallucinations could get. The handsome and popular Tsuyoshi had been destroyed. A few days after this talk, he checked himself into a psychiatric ward. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia caused by severe alcoholism. This was the only conversation topic for a while after he became hospitalized. As for me, I stopped drinking and going out as much for obvious reasons. I drank almost every day, and what happened to Tsuyoshi really made me think about my own health. I went to see him quite often at the hospital. Every time I did, he was in worse shape, and after about a month, he was unable to speak properly. It was shortly after this that I received a call from his parents. They told me they were pulling Tsuyoshi out of university and would take him back home to rest. A lot of my things were in his room, so I went over one day to collect them, and his parents were there packing his things into boxes. There was a board above his desk, and I looked over at it. I felt sadness as I looked over the pictures of us and the healthy version of Tsuyoshi smiling back when my eyes stopped at a particular picture. It was from the camping trip he said he went to with his friends. There were 6 of them standing around a barbecue pit. It looked a bit hazy, but when I squinted my eyes to try to figure out whether that was just the smoke, I realized it was something entirely different. It was a see-through image of a woman without any eyes or a nose. A woman with only a mouth and dressed in a kimono, almost taking up the entire frame. She looked exactly like what Tsuyoshi had described. My heart stopped beating for a couple of seconds and I felt an instant chill run down my spine. I grabbed the photo and stuffed it into my pocket. I somehow felt like that's what I was supposed to do. I wasn't planning to go to the temple and ask someone to take a look at it or to get it exorcised. I wasn't planning to talk about this to anybody either. I think deep down, I knew all of that would be futile. I can't tell you why I was convinced about that, so you're just going to have to take my word for it. After this, my perspective of people talking to thin air has changed. What if these people were really fighting something? Fighting for their lives with some paranormal entity that only he or she could see and hear. Before I end my post, I want to share why I decided to share this story after 10 years. I met someone through work. Apparently, she's a spiritual medium who's well known across the globe. She looks like a regular middle-aged woman and works for an insurance company but does readings on the side. I showed her the picture and told her everything that happened to Tsuyoshi. She told me straight up that the woman in the kimono took a liking to Tsuyoshi. The old man, his guardian angel, probably wasn't his guardian angel either. She was playing with him and enjoying watching him suffer and wither away to nothing. Apparently, even if you've never done anything wrong in your life, there's a chance that your energy waves might match, or through some other trigger, you might attract spirits towards you. And if they happen to be purely evil like this woman, there's really nothing you can do about it. She said that there are unlucky people like that all over the world and, with a sharp look, told me to forget about Tsuyoshi. There are so many unbelievable things that happen in this world, and this is one of them. You might not believe this story, but I promise you, everything is true.